Ladies and gentlemen, today we dive into a case study of modern media, politics, and perception. You may have seen or heard about that video, the one that sparked intense public debate, speculation, and countless reaction clips. But let's take a step back and approach this with a calm, educational lens. First, we must understand how media virality works. A short video, clipped, edited, and shared, can travel faster than context ever could. In a digital landscape where seconds matter more than substance, even a thoughtful pause or misstep can be framed in ways that distort intent. This is not unique to one individual or one party. It is a phenomenon we all must become more literate in. Second, let's talk about leadership and political accountability. When leaders face tough questions, especially in emotionally charged situations, they carry the burden of both their words and their silences. It is natural for the public to expect clarity, empathy, and responsibility, but what happens when public expectations clash with the calculated discipline of political communication? This brings us to the danger of selective editing. A few seconds of footage, when isolated from what came before or after, can dramatically alter how a message is received. Nuance is lost, intention is blurred, and the truth, it often lies somewhere outside the frame. That is why media literacy is not just a useful skill, it is a civic necessity. Now, turning our focus to public reaction, outrage is easy, sharing is instant, but thoughtful analysis takes time. The question we should be asking isn't just what did that video show, but what context are we missing? True understanding comes from examining the broader conversation, not just a viral highlight. In this broader conversation, Louise Haigh's reaction offers an important layer. Her statements, or even her silence, have been interpreted as signs of either disapproval, restraint, or unity. It reminds us that party dynamics are complex, and not every response is broadcasted in real time. Internal debates, strategy, and timing all play a role in what we do or do not see. Finally, let's step back and look at the bigger picture. While viral moments can spark discussion, they often overshadow the deeper issues: healthcare, education, economic policy, national infrastructure. The danger is in reducing leadership to a meme or a moment, rather than judging it by policy, consistency, and delivery. So, as we consider that video and the whirlwind it created, let's ask better questions, seek fuller context, and demand more from both our media and our politics. The truth is rarely as simple or as viral as a 20-second clip. Thank you. In today's hyper-connected digital environment, the way we consume and interpret information has undergone a dramatic transformation. Central to this change is the phenomenon of media virality, the process through which content spreads rapidly across social platforms, often shaping public opinion before thorough understanding or verification can take place. To truly grasp the implications of any viral political video, especially ones that stir emotional reactions or appear controversial, we must first understand the dynamics that govern why such content gains traction and how it can influence viewers' perspectives. Media virality is not just about luck or timing. It is engineered, facilitated, and often manipulated. Short-form videos, provocative thumbnails, bold captions, and emotional cues are all designed to trigger immediate reactions. Whether it's anger, sympathy, ridicule, or outrage, emotional engagement is the engine that powers virality. Algorithms on platforms like X, formerly Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok prioritize content that generates interaction, likes, shares, comments, even if the content lacks context or accuracy. This means that what the public sees most is not necessarily what's most important or truthful, but rather what's most provocative. When a video of a political figure is clipped and shared in isolation, it's often framed in a way that emphasizes conflict, contradiction, or failure. These narratives travel far more efficiently than nuanced explanations or in-depth interviews. A 3 Second pause in speech can be framed as hesitation. A sentence taken out of context can be presented as a contradiction. A moment of silence can be interpreted as ignorance or evasion. The truth is that videos do not just show what happened, they also reflect how someone wants you to interpret what happened. Once a clip begins to circulate, its reach is amplified through networks of users, influencers, political commentators, and partisan accounts. Each layer of sharing often adds another layer of interpretation, bias, or manipulation. A video that started as a 30-second clip might be further reduced to a 10-second meme or turned into a GIF with added captions that nudge viewers toward a particular viewpoint. The result is a kind of informational telephone game where the original meaning is reshaped through repetition and reinterpretation. There is also a powerful psychological effect at play. When people see the same clip repeatedly, especially from different sources, they begin to perceive it as more credible, even if it's lacking context. This is known as the illusory truth effect, the tendency to believe something is true after repeated exposure. In politics, where public trust is already fragile, viral media exploits this vulnerability by reinforcing impressions that may not be based on a complete or fair representation of events. Understanding media virality also requires us to confront our own biases as viewers. Humans are naturally drawn to information that confirms what we already believe, a phenomenon known as confirmation bias. If someone already feels skeptical or disillusioned about a political figure or party, a viral video that paints them in a bad light may seem more believable or satisfying, regardless of its accuracy. This reinforces polarization and narrows the public's willingness to engage in critical or balanced thinking. Furthermore, virality thrives in environments where immediacy is valued over reflection. Social media does not reward waiting for full transcripts, investigative journalism, or press briefings. It rewards the hot take, the viral thread, the clipped moment. In this race for attention, slow and thoughtful analysis is often left behind. As a result, public discourse becomes reactive instead of reflective. Educationally speaking, it is crucial for citizens to develop digital media literacy. This means learning how to ask key questions before accepting viral content at face value. Where did this clip come from? Was it edited? What was said before and after this moment? What is the agenda of the account sharing it? Has it been verified by a neutral source? Engaging with these questions does not make one politically disengaged or indecisive. It makes one a more responsible and informed participant in democracy. In conclusion, media virality is a powerful force that shapes perceptions long before truth has a chance to catch up. It is not inherently malicious, but it is often exploited. To navigate it responsibly, we must be vigilant, critical, and willing to look beyond what trends and what shocks. Only by doing so can we ensure that our opinions are shaped not by fleeting impressions, but by thoughtful understanding. Political accountability is one of the cornerstones of a functioning democracy. It refers to the obligation of elected officials to answer to the public for their actions, decisions, and policies. In simple terms, it means that leaders must be held responsible for how they govern, how they communicate, and how they respond to public concerns. But in today's fast-moving political environment, especially when viral content captures public attention, understanding what accountability truly involves is more important than ever. At its core, political accountability goes beyond reacting to controversy or managing public image. It involves a deeper, structural responsibility to uphold integrity, demonstrate transparency, and act in the interest of the people, even in uncomfortable or difficult circumstances. When a controversial incident emerges, such as a widely shared video featuring a prominent public figure, It becomes a test of how effectively political leaders practice this accountability in real time. Accountability requires timely and honest communication. Leaders cannot always control what goes viral or how their actions are perceived, but they can control how they respond. A lack of response, a dismissive comment, or a defensive posture can all be interpreted as evasive, even when there may be more nuanced reasons behind such choices. By contrast, a clear and direct acknowledgement of a situation, coupled with a willingness to clarify or correct misunderstandings, reinforces public trust. It is also crucial to distinguish between political accountability and public relations management. In a media-saturated age, politicians are often surrounded by communications advisors whose job is to shape perception. While communication strategy is part of modern governance, there is a risk when strategy takes precedence over substance. A leader who avoids tough questions or deflects responsibility to preserve image may achieve short-term stability, but risks long-term erosion of credibility. Another aspect of accountability is consistency. Citizens look for patterns in behavior. When a leader sets a precedent, whether it's how they respond to difficult questions, address ethical concerns, or handle internal party disagreement, they are expected to maintain that standard. Any perceived inconsistency opens the door to accusations of double standards or political convenience. Accountability, therefore, is not just about single moments of truth-telling, it's about a continuous demonstration of integrity over time. Furthermore, accountability is not a one-person obligation. It is supported and sometimes enforced by party colleagues, opposition leaders, journalists, and civil society. When public figures within the same political group remain silent during controversial events, it can signal unity, indecision, or internal tension. In some cases, it may be strategic restraint. In others, it may reflect discomfort or disagreement. Political accountability often plays out not just in the words of a single leader, but in the collective response, or lack thereof, from their political circle. This brings us to an important educational point. Accountability should not be mistaken for perfection. No leader will respond flawlessly in every situation. The demand for political accountability should not turn into an expectation for unerring moral or rhetorical purity. Rather, it should be an insistence that leaders learn from mistakes, remain open to criticism, and show the humility to correct course when needed. Crucially, accountability must be proactive, not just reactive. Waiting for public backlash or viral exposure to take responsibility is a failure of leadership. Ethical governance requires anticipating the consequences of decisions and being forthright with the public before controversies arise. This includes being honest about complex issues, even when the truth may be politically inconvenient or emotionally difficult to communicate. In an educational sense, teaching citizens about accountability means encouraging critical engagement with the behavior of those in power. It means going beyond headlines or viral moments and asking, has this leader consistently demonstrated transparency? Have they admitted when they were wrong? Do they prioritize public service over self-preservation? These are the questions that informed voters must learn to ask. In conclusion, political accountability is not about optics, it's about responsibility. It's not about managing fallout, it's about earning trust. And in times of controversy, it becomes the clearest measure of a leader's values. When approached with thoughtfulness and integrity, accountability strengthens democracy and builds resilience in public institutions. When avoided or reduced to spin, it does the opposite. As citizens, commentators, and educators, it is our role to distinguish the two, and to hold our representatives to the standard they were elected to uphold. Selective editing is one of the most subtle yet powerful tools in modern communication, particularly in the realm of politics and media. At its most basic level, Selective editing refers to the act of cutting, trimming, or rearranging content in a way that emphasizes certain elements while omitting others. This can significantly alter the viewer's perception of what really happened. In the age of social media, where video clips are often reduced to 10, 20, or 30 seconds, the impact of selective editing on public discourse is immense and often underestimated. To understand the danger of selective editing, we must first recognize the nature of digital attention spans. Online audiences tend to engage with content quickly and superficially. As a result, content creators, including journalists, influencers, and political activists, are incentivized to create content that is short, impactful, and emotionally charged. In this environment, long, form explanations, full transcripts, or complete interviews are less likely to be consumed, while carefully curated clips thrive. In political contexts, this becomes particularly problematic. A political figure may speak for several minutes in an interview or speech, addressing complex issues with varying degrees of confidence, clarity, or emotion. However, a selective edit can isolate one awkward pause, a poorly worded sentence, or an ambiguous facial expression, and present it as the defining moment of that entire appearance. This practice strips away the surrounding context and compresses the meaning into something potentially misleading. The real danger lies in the illusion of completeness. A viewer might see a 15-second video clip and assume they have the full story. But what came before? What question was asked? What was said immediately afterward? Was the clip rearranged or trimmed to remove critical clarifications or qualifications? These details matter, especially when dealing with topics as sensitive as policy, ethics, or personal conduct. One of the reasons selective editing is so effective is that it can appear authentic. The footage may not be fake, but it is curated to produce a particular interpretation. This is where media literacy becomes essential. Audiences must be trained to recognize that what is shown is not always the same as what happened. Visual media has an inherent power to persuade, and without critical thinking, that power can be abused. Moreover, selective editing does not always originate from bad faith actors. Sometimes it is the result of simplification, an effort to fit a complex event into a digestible format. A journalist may highlight the most newsworthy portion of a speech, or a political campaign may showcase a clip that aligns with their narrative. But even when not malicious, selective editing carries risk. By distilling events into highlight reels, it encourages reactive judgments over reasoned reflection. The ethical implications are significant. A misrepresented video can damage reputations, influence elections, or shift public opinion based on incomplete information. Once a selective clip goes viral, it becomes almost impossible to control the narrative that follows. Clarifications or full versions released afterward rarely receive the same level of attention. This phenomenon, known as the continued influence effect, demonstrates that misinformation, even when corrected, can continue to shape beliefs. Another concerning trend is context collapse, where content is removed from its original setting and placed into an entirely new narrative framework. A clip from a policy discussion might be shared with a sarcastic caption suggesting incompetence, or a moment of hesitation might be presented as proof of dishonesty. These framings often shape the way audiences interpret the visual, regardless of the speaker's original intent. From an educational standpoint, it is vital to equip citizens with tools to identify selectively edited content. This includes checking the source of the video, looking for the full version, understanding the setting in which it was recorded, and questioning the framing language used when it's shared. It also means recognizing the motivations behind those who share viral clips, be they political opponents, interest groups, or sensationalist media outlets. In conclusion, selective editing is a double-edged sword. While it can be used to highlight real issues and bring attention to important moments, it can also be used to distort truth and manipulate perception. In a democratic society where informed citizens form the foundation of governance, protecting against this form of distortion is not just a media issue, it is a civic imperative. The next time we encounter a viral clip, we must resist the urge to react instantly. Instead, we should pause, investigate, and ask, what am I not seeing? In an era where political information is often consumed through short videos, headlines, or social media threads, the public's reaction to content, especially controversial or emotionally charged content, can be swift and overwhelming. But reaction and reflection are not the same. While emotional responses are natural, the ability to critically evaluate what we see, hear, and share is one of the most vital civic skills we can cultivate today. When a video involving a political figure begins to circulate, especially one that seems to suggest hesitation, contradiction, or discomfort, it almost always sparks immediate commentary. Online platforms are flooded with takes, some thoughtful, many reactionary. People may feel disappointed, vindicated, enraged, or even entertained, but what often gets lost in this flood of emotion is the process of critical thinking, stepping back to examine not just what happened, but how we know it, what we might be missing, and how reliable our sources are. Critical thinking in this context involves asking key questions. First, we must ask, where is this video from? Who posted it first? Is it a full, unedited segment, or has it been clipped to highlight a single moment? Context is everything in political discourse. A silence might look like evasion in a viral clip, but it could represent careful consideration, respect for a sensitive topic, or simply a pause before responding to a complex issue. Without the full conversation, we are left guessing. Another crucial question is, what are my own biases? We are all prone to confirmation bias, the psychological tendency to favor information that confirms our existing beliefs. If someone already distrusts a particular political figure or party, they are more likely to interpret ambiguous behavior as evidence of guilt, weakness, or hypocrisy. The danger here is that our reactions begin to reflect our assumptions rather than the facts. Additionally, we must ask, why is this going viral now? Timing is often a clue to motive. Is this clip emerging at a time of political crisis, an election campaign, or a major policy debate? Sometimes content is circulated not for informational purposes, but to distract, deflect, or damage reputations. Understanding the surrounding political environment helps us assess whether a piece of media is being used constructively or manipulatively. Public reaction is also influenced by social proof, the tendency to believe something is true because many others appear to believe it. When we see hundreds or thousands of people liking, sharing, or commenting on a video in a particular way, we may unconsciously adopt the same view. But popularity is not proof. A comment section filled with sarcasm and outrage does not mean the interpretation is accurate. That's why education on media literacy and reasoning is so essential. Schools, universities, and even workplaces need to prepare citizens to engage thoughtfully with information. This means developing habits like fact-checking, source evaluation, and considering multiple perspectives. It also means recognizing emotional manipulation, understanding rhetorical techniques, and being able to differentiate between argument and propaganda. Importantly, critical thinking does not mean becoming cynical or distrusting everything. It means being intellectually honest and curious, open to new information, but unwilling to accept it blindly. It is perfectly reasonable to be concerned about how a public figure handles a sensitive issue. But that concern must be grounded in a complete, fair, and informed understanding of events, not a reaction to a viral moment alone. There is also a collective responsibility involved. When individuals share, comment, or amplify a video without context, they participate in shaping public perception. The speed and reach of online platforms mean that misinformation or oversimplification can spread much faster than corrections or clarifications. Each person who interacts with such content becomes part of its trajectory, either by challenging its framing or reinforcing it. In this light, public reaction is not just a passive occurrence, it is a civic action. How we choose to respond to political content says as much about our democratic values as it does about the content itself. Are we contributing to a culture of inquiry and fairness, or to a cycle of outrage and polarization? In conclusion, public reaction will always be an essential part of political life, especially in a free society. But without critical thinking to guide those reactions, we risk mistaking noise for truth and spectacle for substance. By cultivating the discipline to ask questions, verify facts, and understand context, we empower ourselves not just as consumers of media, but as active, thoughtful participants in democracy. The health of a democracy depends not just on elections or laws, but on the quality of political discourse, the way we speak about politics, engage with differing viewpoints, and debate ideas in the public sphere. When political conversation becomes reduced to viral moments, emotionally charged clips, or weaponized media, the result is a gradual erosion of that discourse. The long-term impact of such trends is often underestimated, but it is both measurable and serious. At its best, political discourse is grounded in reasoned argument, civil disagreement, and a shared commitment to truth-seeking. It allows space for complexity, evolving views, and thoughtful critique. However, in recent years, discourse has increasingly been shaped by online behavior, where the loudest, fastest, and most emotionally resonant content often dominates. This shift has created an environment where winning the moment has become more important than explaining the issue. When a selectively edited video circulates widely, especially one that appears to show a public figure in a poor light, it tends to generate waves of reaction, from public mockery and political attack adds to polarizing media commentary. These reactions often distract from more substantive conversations that require time, nuance, and critical thought. As a result, policy discussion is sidelined by personality focus. The question becomes not what was said in full, or what is the underlying policy debate, but rather, did you see that clip? This is not an elevation of discourse, it's a collapse of it. Another key consequence is the rise of performance politics. When politicians are constantly aware that every sentence may be clipped and shared, many begin to prioritize speaking in sound bites over substance. They may avoid difficult questions or reduce complex policy into catchy, camera-friendly lines. This creates a feedback loop. Viral moments drive media coverage, which then shapes how politicians prepare and present themselves in public. Over time, genuine dialogue is replaced by rehearsed messaging crafted for maximum shareability rather than meaningful engagement. For the public, this environment encourages tribal thinking. Viral political videos are often interpreted not through a neutral lens, but through partisan identity. Supporters of a political figure may dismiss any criticism as biased editing or media manipulation, while opponents see every awkward pause or stumble as confirmation of incompetence. Instead of assessing claims and responses on merit, audiences are primed to score points for their side. This adversarial mindset leaves little room for independent judgment, healthy skepticism, or political nuance. The impact on political discourse also extends to trust in institutions. When public debates are dominated by selectively framed content and polarizing interpretations, people begin to lose faith in traditional sources of information, journalism, parliamentary debate, academic analysis. Some become cynical, believing that all content is manipulated. Others may retreat into ideological echo chambers, seeking only content that reaffirms their world. Both outcomes are damaging. Trust is a fragile social resource, and when it erodes, societies struggle to build consensus or solve shared problems. Education plays a critical role in reversing this trend. Schools and universities must prioritize teaching young people how to engage with political content thoughtfully and constructively. This includes understanding rhetorical techniques, recognizing biased framing, and distinguishing between persuasive media and reasoned argument. Civics education must also help students see politics not just as a contest between personalities, but as a process for negotiating the public good through debate, legislation, and compromise. Importantly, the public must also be reminded that not everything that goes viral is newsworthy. The frequency with which a video is shared does not determine its importance. Political discourse should not be guided by outrage algorithms, but by civic priorities, economic policy, healthcare, climate, justice, education. Elevating these discussions requires effort from all participants. Journalists who choose substance over clicks, citizens who pause before sharing, and politicians who resist the urge to perform rather than inform. In conclusion, the impact of viral, selectively presented content on political discourse is profound. It shortens attention spans, rewards polarization, and encourages superficial engagement with issues that deserve deeper consideration. To preserve the integrity of democratic conversation, we must resist the pull of sensationalism and recommit to a form of politics that values clarity over charisma, argument over emotion, and truth over trend. Only then can political discourse serve its true purpose, helping societies make informed, collective decisions about their future. In any serious discussion, especially those involving politics, public accountability, or media, the concept of context is not just helpful, it is essential. Full context gives meaning to words, clarity to actions, and fairness to judgments. Without it, we risk misunderstanding events, misrepresenting people, and misinforming the public. In today's digital landscape, where clips are often shared without background, quotes are stripped of nuance, and situations are simplified into slogans, the loss of context has become a major barrier to informed dialogue. Let's begin by defining what full context really means. Context refers to all the surrounding information that gives a particular statement, action, or event its true significance. This includes the setting in which something was said or done, the question that prompted it, the speaker's tone and intent, the broader topic being discussed, and the social or political conditions at the time. Removing even one of these elements can alter how the information is perceived, and in some cases completely reverse its meaning. In political communication, this matters immensely. A single sentence taken out of a 5-minute answer can sound evasive, inflammatory, or even contradictory when isolated. A pause before answering a sensitive question might be interpreted as reluctance or guilt, when in fact it could be a moment of careful thought. A statement made in response to a hypothetical question might be misread as an official policy position. These are not just innocent misunderstandings. They can reshape public opinion, drive media narratives, and influence elections. The public must be aware of the dangers of partial context. One of the most common is that it feeds emotional reaction over rational analysis. Without the full story, people are more likely to jump to conclusions, assign blame, or reinforce their existing biases. In such a climate, it becomes easier for misinformation to flourish and harder for truth to gain traction. More dangerously, public trust in institutions erodes when people realize that what they were shown or told was only a fragment of the full picture. Another consequence is that it distorts the process of political accountability. Holding public figures responsible for their words and actions is a democratic necessity. But accountability must be based on accurate information. If criticism is rooted in decontextualized content, it becomes difficult to distinguish between fair scrutiny and manipulated outrage. This not only undermines legitimate critiques, but also damages the credibility of those raising concerns. In the long term, both politicians and the public suffer. From an educational perspective, the importance of full context should be emphasized early and often. In schools and universities, students should be taught how to identify incomplete information, question framing, and seek primary sources. For example, when a controversial video circulates, critical thinkers will ask, was this edited? What was said before or after? Who released this? What's the broader conversation? These are basic yet powerful questions that foster deeper understanding and resist manipulation. Furthermore, the importance of full context extends beyond video and speech. It applies to data, statistics, and even historical references. A number cited without explaining the methodology behind it can be misleading. A historical comparison made without acknowledging differences in time, scale, or relevance can distort an argument. In every case, context turns isolated facts into informed knowledge. For content creators, journalists, and influencers, the ethical responsibility is clear: present information in its full context whenever possible. This does not mean every report must include every detail, but it does mean avoiding deliberate omissions that change the meaning of what is being reported. It also means resisting the temptation to exaggerate for the sake of clicks, likes, or partisan gain. As consumers of information, the public also has a role. We must train ourselves to pause before reacting, to question the completeness of what we see, and to resist the urge to share content based solely on emotional impact. Doing so creates a healthier information environment, one where truth is given a fair chance to be heard and where dialogue is grounded in substance, not snapshots. In conclusion, full context is not a luxury. It is a necessity for democratic understanding. It enables accountability without distortion, debate without deception, and decisions based on truth rather than impulse. In an age of rapid information and viral media, seeking and protecting context is one of the most powerful ways we can preserve the integrity of political discourse and public decision making. To demand full context is to demand fairness, accuracy, and ultimately, a more thoughtful and informed society.